This is Gotham Knights. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here on the Series X version of, well, Gotham Knights? Basically full 4K resolution. It runs at 30 FPS, which is not the best. And it does have HDR support. It has spatial sound, Dolby Atmos, DTS:X support. And it's got ray traced reflections. Ooh. And apparently, to a degree, also ray traced shadows, and some of the lighting is impacted by that as well, but that's to a smaller degree. The ray tracing, as far as the outdoor environment, it's kind of like puddles that sort of vanish as you walk over them, which is kind of interesting. The best application, because you can kind of see here, like it literally doesn't look like there's any sort of puddle work. So the reflections are very well done when it comes to ray tracing. Like at a distance, they look pretty cool. But the best part of the ray trace reflections is the interior buildings during levels, because it actually looks quite sharp and actually fairly well done from a ray tracing perspective. Now, 30 FPS, obviously not the best of experiences if we do get a performance mode, which I'm kind of shocked that we didn't get a performance mode. Obviously, I'll come back and take a look at that, because I do think it should be pretty easy for them to, well, I don't know, pretty easy is a fair thing to say, but I think we should be able to get a 60 FPS mode in here, maybe drop the resolution if needed, drop the ray trace effects, give us something that's a little bit more fluid. But when I say 30 FPS, that's like the target, because when you're driving around the city and you're doing, certain other activities, it definitely drops to like 20 FPS. If you do co-op, even in like any circumstance, you'll get drops probably sub 20 FPS I was feeling at times, and I noticed a couple crashes, but crashes only seem to be the case if I was going to play co-op with others. So what is Gotham Knights? Well, it looks as though it's an open world kind of game, but it really isn't. It's got gameplay that feels reminiscent of like the 360 era in terms of its linear play, its backtracking, its lack of really exciting or interesting or intricate gameplay. It is kind of a bit of a snooze fest. It's spongy with enemies that are not really dynamic in combat, that kind of at times looks sleek in the moves you're pulling off, but is generally a little bit boring and ultimately disappointing. That being said, you do get a good amount of game time out of this one if you are... I just want to also comment, the game's streets just feel absolutely empty for like a next-gen city. It visually looks quite beautiful. I really will give it that. The character models are excellent. There's so many great costumes. Seriously, the costume work is just absolutely impeccable in this game for the different suits and whatnot. They nailed that portion of this. Very, very, very well done for costumes. And there's 4 different characters. But yeah, it looks like a next-gen world with like a couple gens ago gameplay applied to it. But that's where I was going back to my point, that you do actually get a good amount of game time out of this. Like the campaign itself, at least like 10 hours if you just rush through it. Tons of side activities, random events that go on. But there's a lot of issues with this one. A lot of problems. Again, ultimately, the biggest thing for me with it being just really insanely boring to play, which, even if you go and you do updates, you do fixes, that's not going to fix the core issues with the gameplay mechanics. The story itself is kind of interesting, incredibly predictable, but, interesting nonetheless. It's got some cool little weird side missions, I guess you would say, side characters and activities you can find yourself doing. It's got a host of characters within an established Batman world. It has, this world has been lived in. People that from the Batman franchise have died over the years. There's a lot that's gone on, and you learn that as the story goes on with little, side notes and side things where it's like, they'll talk about, this character being dead or this event having happened. I think it very much tries to be its own thing, but it also plays around with a lot of the existing concepts of, like, events that have happened within the Batman universe. But yeah, you've got Alfred and you've got your team. You can play as the 4 different I guess you would say, Bat Kids. You've got Batgirl, you've got Red Hood, you've got Robin, you've got Nightwing. You can play as them all, you can change between them, you can level them up. They have different costumes, different abilities. They've got different ways that they fight crime and they take on criminals. And, you know, it's kind of an interesting experience from that perspective. And you can play together in 2-player co-op. There's a 4-player co-op game mode coming out. It doesn't sound like you're going to be able to play the whole thing in co-op to like 4 players, which is a little disappointing. But, you know, it'll be neat. It sounds more like it's some sort of raid type thing. But we'll have to wait and see because that one's not available yet. So other things that I had issues with is there's points where you can see me kind of collecting these little, I guess you would say, investigation symbols, icons. So there are times where it's literally like, interrogate the mob, and then you have to like walk around looking for like mobsters to interrogate. Like I spent literally 40 minutes while I was playing, you know, a story, like a campaign mission, where I'm just wandering around the city looking for, you know, this specific type of enemy in that, and they don't spawn sometimes during certain nights because you do patrols and then you go and you do your day at the Belfry, which is like your, you know, it's like the Bat Cave for the group of, you know, kids and stuff like that. But I mean, we call them kids just because they're younger than the main Bat characters, but they're probably all in like, what, 20s, maybe up to 30 or something like that at this point. They're age, they're not children. But anyways, yeah, that's the thing, is it's just like, it's got all these really kind of boring open world things that don't take advantage of what is honestly a pretty well put together open world. I mean, I don't think it's anything magical, but it's got all the big sites and the big names of Gotham. It's pretty large in scope, but there's like 0 parts of it that are interesting enough to make you want to really explore it, and there just doesn't seem to be really anything in there to do aside from finding a mission to go off on a different path and explore that. And I think ultimately that is disappointing because they've put all this time into an open world that I just really don't want to explore. I don't have the interest in exploring. And I think that's a shame because, again, it does look kind of neat. It's got different areas. There's like zones that are, you know, kind of like, I guess they call them the freaks, you know, and there's zones that are a little bit more industrial, and, you know, it's got these different segments, but there's not really much that kind of entices you to go out and do that kind of thing. There are new ways that you can travel that you can unlock as you play. So you might find yourself, you know, kind of going and doing these little challenge things so you can get some gliders and stuff. That's pretty cool. But, like, you don't really necessarily have motivation to use the world, and I don't think the campaign itself actually effectively uses the open world that well. I can't believe I actually died there, to be honest. I did, like, 90% of the game without dying or even getting downed. It gets really, like, kind of, I guess the word, I'm trying to think of what the word would be. Spongy, yeah, that's the word. It gets really, really spongy towards the end, because there's like a leveling system, but the leveling system doesn't seem to matter too much, and then it scales dynamically in co-op. So, you know, people get downscaled or upscaled based on their abilities and stuff like that. Where was the thing we were just doing? Did we just lose out on that event? Where was that? Sorry, it's just kind of like random when you kind of die and stuff in this one. And like I was saying, it's just like the missions themselves aren't anything too exciting. The story itself, neat in concept. You know, you're taking on the mystery of the Court of Owls, and there's the, you know, Talia's doing stuff, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But also, it's just like, narrative-wise, it doesn't really make any sense, because it's like, so you play the game as your character and maybe like a secondary character if you're doing co-op. But then you've got, like, you know, every cutscene, it shows, you know, this whole team. It's like, it's not just you. And then it's like, okay, we should split up and do stuff. And then it's like, you know, there's no real connecting thing. And by the end of the game, it kind of looks like it's just your character that's been doing the work the whole time. You know, the kind of ending cutscene is like, it's Batgirl, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but it's just like Batgirl, where it's like, I'm the one in the city and stuff. But it kind of like completely negates the element of this being like a squad. Like, the whole game is about being a team and being a squad during these cutscenes. And then towards the end, it's just like, it was just me or something, and it doesn't even like talk about the other character. It's really weird because there's this lack of cohesion even when you're playing regular levels. You know, it's like the rest of the team will throw in like a sentence here or there, but for the most part it just seems like you're a solo act or a co-op act at times. And it's just kind of bizarre because you've got this concept of you being like the Gotham Knights, but by the end of it, it's just kind of like the solo knight. And there's a new game plus as well if you want to go in and do that. I don't know. It's a bit weird of a game, just in terms of like narrative structure, the concept of it. It's like it wants to be a solo Batman game, but at the same time, it wants to be like a cooperative Batman game. I would say like performance-wise, you know, they were all fine. You know, I'd say the voiceover work and stuff for the different characters is good. They all seemed pretty natural to their, you know, particular styles and stuff. I'm not hugely familiar with the characters. You know, obviously I know of Batgirl, I know of Robin, but you know, these variations. Is my cape like stuck in the front of me? There's one character where there's like his hoodie strings, so the Red Hood there, his hoodie strings are like kind of sticking outwards. It's just hilarious. But that's what I'm saying, is just from the story structuring, I'm so confused as to, you know, what they're trying to go for. You know, is this a solo game with the choice of playing different characters? Is it supposed to be a co-op game at its heart? Why doesn't the story structuring have all of these characters coming together at different points? Why don't they have them coming together at the end for things? It's just, it's weird. It's like, it's the Batgirl show, but kind of not during most of it. I don't know. It's really, really strange at times. But I mean, you do get side activities to do. You know, there's extra stuff in the city. There's like these dynamic combative events. What is going on here with this electric stuff? Holy. You know, there is a lot that you can take in. And the main story is decently meaty enough, but I just really didn't find it that interesting. And I found the puzzles to be just insanely obnoxious in terms of their design. I didn't care enough to do the solving things where you gotta connect dots and things like that. But doing like some other puzzles in the game, I was just like, what does this want? That's another thing too, is just like the lack of like real direction in what you're doing. Interrogate a mobster. Okay, where are they? Or, you know, solve this puzzle. It's like, well, what, you know, what exactly do you want me to do? Because I was just sitting there sometimes, I'm like, what is my, you know, what is my direction here? What are my goals? And then it's got like this, you'll see here, like this last gen, like you can clearly tell that this was a cross-gen title, because it's got these nonsensical loading screens. This is taking a little bit, but usually it's just like an instant, you know, just A to continue. So you get these awkward points where it's like move between walls in certain areas and it's like a loading screen, or, you know, between level things it's a loading screen, where it's like clearly these, okay, this is the longest sort of loading segment. Anyways, typically, you know, the loading stuff is just like instant, and I just kind of sit there and I'm like, you know, what is the point of having these loading screens? I get that it was very late that they kind of, I guess you would say, canceled the production on last gen, and you really see the long-term effects of that, where the game was fundamentally, you know, not designed for these platforms. It was just kind of like, well, we can't at all make this, like, again, like the frame rate sometimes in this drops so insanely low that you're just like, holy, you know, like, what are you supposed to do on this one? And you just gotta kind of deal with it. There's a wide range of different like modification things which are kind of cool. You might find that to be sort of interesting. You kind of modify and improve your different armor, and you can craft stuff, and then you can customize your different suit concepts too as you level them up. There's an ability tree that you can work through for different skills. There's emails, which are kind of funny. You can see a bunch of different challenge things that you can do. So there is, you know, there is activities. There are goals. It's a pretty big city. Like, I'm not trying to make this sound like there's not anything to this game. It does have stuff going on, right? Like, it does have activities. It does have stuff for you to work towards. There's, like, little case files. It's just, you know, don't expect like a super meaty thing. Don't expect something too insanely deep in terms of gameplay, you know, mechanics. Just kind of expect something that is, you know, straightforward. For some people, I think this might be fun. You know, you might find value in it. I always try to like see the different perspectives for those that are looking at, you know, kind of playing something like this. Like, you get time, right? That's what you're kind of looking for. Is it going to be something that's like super exciting to play? I don't personally think so. Is it going to be something that's really dynamic? I don't know. But it has decently well done characters. It's got a next gen looking world, one that clearly was sort of stuck between the transitionary period of, well, we want to make this work on last gen consoles, but all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we can barely make it work on next gen consoles. We got to give up on last gen. And I wouldn't be too surprised if they try to rework it again and try to get it running on those platforms. You know what I mean? I could see that still being the case to try to get some more out of this. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit more fun in co-op, but obviously, like I said, your performance tanks even further. It's got these really, I also want to mention this, like these weird sort of like, I want to call them like temporal or like resolution type scaling techniques. Constantly, you can like look up into the sky and you see like these sort of like pixel almost lines that pop up, and I see that during some cutscenes and stuff too. It's very weird. But it's whenever you look at the sky, it's like these squares, and I think that's a technique to try to make sure that the quality stays where it's supposed to be. But man, it really sticks out to me, and it's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, immersion killing a little bit? I don't know. I mean, we are bat people, vigilantes running around the city. So, you know, you do get some skills, you do get some skill trees to work through. It's light, but it's enough that kind of fits into the story. I do maybe wish that element was a bit deeper. It's weird, like, as I was saying, it's a next-gen looking sort of world that runs bad at, like, a bad frame rate. It's a story that really isn't anything too mind-blowing, but it's okay to play through. Some of the missions are just nonsensical. I do actually feel that a large portion of the story was just me driving across the city, because they'll put one objective on one end, they'll put another objective on the other end. And I mean, if you got the ability to kind of fly, you'll get through the city faster, but it's, you know, maybe some traveling abilities kind of help out a little bit for that, but it still feels like a lot of it is just sort of padding. You know, linear rooms that you move through during campaign. Like, we're not doing any missions right now, story-wise, in the campaign, but you go off to a place and you do like a quick, you know, linear thing, and, you know, that's kind of all there is, and then you gotta backtrack. Like, if you actually see the missions, I did, like, you know, a stream of the whole thing, so you go watch that if you want to see more of the gameplay in action. But, like, you literally kind of just go through these places, and you go, you know, backtracking constantly through the same areas over and over again in these really small environments. As I was saying, though, like, the cutscenes are really good, the character models are really good. They absolutely just nailed the look of the characters, particularly, you know, Batgirl. I think they did an absolutely fantastic job with her costumes and outfits in this one. Like, really feels, at least to me, authentic to the character from, like, I guess you might say, like, a comic standpoint or something like that. I don't know. It's just, yeah, kind of really pleased with that. And they've got, like, this great photo mode, which is kind of funny. Oh, she's not doing her weird pose, but she's got her weird smile on that I turned on. Sorry. What's really funny, though, is when you do a photo mode, like, usually my character's, like, arms are sprawled up and she's, like, flying in the air. Like, your co-op partner literally just sees you doing this weird thing, but they're, like, still playing regularly. Even in cutscenes, it'll show you doing, like, a back and forth talk. And then, like, basically your co-op partner's just standing there, and they can, like, hit the scene, like they can hit the character, and you'll see like scuff marks popping up in the air. It's hilarious. So, you know, I don't know if there's necessarily the greatest amount of polish to this. There's performance issues, there's gameplay issues, there's mint issues. At times it's really boring, like insanely boring. I think there's a lot of issues that are more than just technical with this one. I think it's not really a great experience. It's kind of below average, or even, and I'd say a failing mark of just being something that feels like it's from a different time with the visual shine of a modern title, and it just, for me, it's a failure.